Grendel. Grendel. I'm going to be referring to my notes I have here because, beginners and all that. That's who we are. So Grendel, this video is going to be about Grendel and Grendel's mother specifically. We'll deal with the dragon next week. There we are. So Grendel. Grendel in the poem is referred to as a descendant of Cain. Well, actually, Grendel and Grendel's mother are both referred to as descendants of Cain. Make of that what you will. We are talking about the biblical Cain and Abel, first murderer, yada, yada, yada. This basically is saying that Grendel and Grendel's mother are basically cursed literally from the get-go. Monsters, horrific, worst things there are. And the fact that there is this biblical connection to Grendel and Grendel's mother, he doesn't actually start attacking Herots until someone starts singing. I think it was about Genesis, about creation, all that kind of stuff. And that's when Grendel gets a bit pissed off and then attacks Herots. And he continues attacking Herod every night for like 12 years. If you just happen to be some poor bastard in Herod at that time, the likelihood is you'd get messed up. So maybe don't be in Herod at night when Grendel appears. I've got down here, motivated by violence, not just by violence, but by jealousy of humans. I've read this, that some people would see him as an other, someone who is out there, someone who gets treated subhuman, as it were, not just necessarily a fear thing. And of course, he's jealous of the fact that people can move around and enjoy and laugh and play and all that kind of shit, and he doesn't like that, and so he just resents everything about it. He represents evil and envy, and alienation, which we just covered. He's a bad guy because he's excluded from all that. That's a grudge to hold, I suppose. And for how long are you going to hold a grudge like that? 12 years? Because someone sang a song you didn't like? That's fucked up. But I guess it's that unknown, right? He is the unknown. He is that unknown thing in the darkness, that creak of the floorboards, that kind of like shadow you see in your closet, like the boogeyman under the bed, that sort of thing. I mean, the themes he brings up, he's about isolation, resentment, punishment. He's described as humanoid, but not human, more monstrous. Not exactly, I don't want to say normal. It's the wrong thing to say. I mean, how normal can a monster be, right? But in that, he's contorted in some way, that he's always in some kind of pain. And of course, Robert Zemeckis, in his 2007 version of this poem, the animated film, Grendel is depicted as a very tortured, distorted version of a giant human being. Anyway. What does Grendel symbolize? What does he symbolize? He symbolizes the dark of humanity. Okay. What was that guy's name? The German fellow. I've got his name in a book over there somewhere. No, I don't. Mellenhoff? I think it was Mellenhoff who said that he represents the raging ocean, that sort of thing. It's very metaphorical. His mother represents the deep, dark ocean, but, I could be wrong about that one. There are some details of who said what. I've read them, and sometimes I remember them right, and sometimes I don't, so don't quote me on that. I think his name was Carl Mellenhoff. It's worth checking out, because if you're really kind of want to get deep into what Grendel is, that kind of stuff, I think is quite interesting. Whether it's right or not doesn't really matter. It's someone's opinion about what Grendel represents. I think he personally represents the unknown in the darkness, right? Because he only ever comes at night, and when we're talking about, 6th century, early 6th century, late 5th century, we are talking about the nights were proper dark. If there was no fire around, anyway. Oh, for the Anglo-Saxons, this reflects the real fears. wild animals, blah, 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 blah. A moral threat lurking in the darkness, outside civilization's walls, I've got written here. Anyway, links to Norse myth. Was it in the poem? It might have been in Seamus Heaney's translation, where they talked about Grendel and Grendel's mother living in the land of like giants and trolls and all that kind of stuff. And there was a theory that when Beowulf goes into the lake and gets to Grendel's mother's lair, it's a transitional point from Midgard into Jotunheim. I say Midgard and Jotunheim because they're just easier to pronounce. I could say Mythgard, or I could say, how would the Jotunheim one be? Jotunheimer, I guess. Anyway, again, pronunciation is still something I'm working on. I have books and shit. If you've seen previous videos, you would have seen some of those books. If you want to know what books I have, just drop me a comment and I'll go grab those. And while you're down there leaving a comment, smash that fucking like button as well, because I could do all the help I can get. Anyway, so where were we? Biblical evil. We've dealt with the biblical evil part because we talked about Cain and Abel, descendant of Cain. Yeah, anyway. Grendel's mother, motivated by revenge. I mean, this is... Obviously, he goes out scavenging, nothing happens, or he doesn't come back. Mother gets worried, she goes out looking for him. She goes to Heorot because, mothers know where their sons go, right? Mine never used to. And, she kills Asher and takes, he's one of his best advisors, one of Hrothgar's best advisors, and one of his friends and one of his old retainers. In the poem, I'm pretty sure she only takes that one person, doesn't really do anything else. In the animated film, she kills like 50 people and leaves them hanging from the ceiling, which, I mean, I've read this poem so many fucking times, but I can never actually remember those tiny little details. So I need to go through the poem one more time, I think, and I will be going through it with Tom Shippey's, which, because of Graham Schaefer's video on that, it's probably become one of my favourite translations. Thank you, Graham, for widening my eyes to that fucking thing. Oh, hellish underwater lair. So her lair is, like I said, is underwater. I can't remember if it's a lake or it's just like the bottom of, I think it's the bottom of the waterfall, right? Because that's the Grettir Saga is the same. It's at the bottom of, it's behind a waterfall. Grettir Saga is another thing that ties very much so into the themes of Beowulf. Except in Grettir, it's a female monster first, and then he goes to the lair and finds a male monster. Again, he finds something to kill it with, and he brings back the bones of two people that were killed earlier on. And of course, Beowulf takes Grendel's head, which he basically cuts his head off, and he just so happens to find a big giant sword hanging on the wall, which is what he uses to kill Grendel's mother. If you haven't actually read Beowulf or seen any of the movies or the TV shows or read any of the books, spoiler alert. Sorry. Maybe what I should do is now say, if you haven't actually read any of the translations, any of the other material that's out there on Beowulf, haven't seen any videos on Beowulf, haven't seen any of the movies about Beowulf, there will be spoilers. It's a bit late. I'm saying that now, though, because why wouldn't I do that? The hellish underwater lair. So he has to fight a bunch of monsters as he goes down there, so it's not like her and Grendel are the only ones there. There's others, and we kind of hear about this, that they live with giants and whatnot, but these aren't giants, they're more like sea creatures. Again, he's dealt with sea creatures before. We get that with his match with Brekka. Oh, dark feminine. The dark feminine. No shit, Sherlock. She is an absolute... What did someone call her before? Some kind of hag. I can't remember what the phrasing was exactly. Unlike Grendel, she's emotionally complex. Is she emotionally complex? Or is she just behaving like a parent? Her son goes missing for a bit, gets basically killed, ends up dead. dies in front of her, then she goes after the people that did that. I don't understand why that would be emotionally complex. She's doing what any parent would do. Right? Behave. Oh, why this mattered to the Anglo-Saxons. I mean, yes, anxiety is about safety, order, and survival. We told stories about monsters. We've been doing that for a long time, campfire stories and whatnot. Demons and monsters live in the dark, in the shadows, and just outside the light. We have the firelight or the electric lights. So yeah, I mean, we've always had these since there've been stories being told, right? Since there've been civilization and we've been telling stories, we've had this kind of thing. I mean, the bear son, which comes up a lot when you start studying Beowulf, is anything from like 3,000 to 4,000 years old, and we've had these stories. Right? We tamed wolves and turned them into dogs to protect us from what's out there, to protect our flock, to protect us from what's out there in the dark, right? I mean, anywho, there is a lot of Christianization of this poem. I have this personal belief that it came over during the Great Migration in the 6th century, late 5th, 6th century. And these stories would have been gathered up by those people, like the Angles, the Jutes, and the Saxons, and because they had access to the Baltic and Sweden, Norway. I mean, this whole story takes place in Denmark and Sweden, right? So my idea of where it all came from came as it came over the ocean when they migrated to Britain, England. It wasn't England then, but it was the other place. The other place emphasizes the cycles of vengeance. Cycles of vengeance. I mean, there was the war guild, right? The man price. So you could either get a man price in treasure, like gold, silver, whatever. So a monetary compensation for killing someone, or you got killed, and that's what compensation and the cycle of vengeance would be. I kill one of your family, you then kill a member of my family or me, and then a member of my family goes after you, and then a member of your family goes after that person. And it's just a complete cycle until someone decides to get paid off. And I mean, would this sort of thing, like talking about sitting around a fire, talking about demons and monsters out there in the dark, that would bring people together, because obviously people gathered in much smaller groups back then. Unlike the 9 million people that are in this city right now. We're talking like several thousand, maybe 10,000 max. You'd gather and you'd tell stories, and you'd all know these stories because you would have been told them as a kid, and they've been passed down from generation to generation. And so there'd always be that unknown that lives out there in the dark. Yeah. I was the kid who used to switch his light off and run across my bedroom floor, jump into bed as soon as I possibly could, because I didn't want Jaws to come up through the floor and get me. That's how a child's mind works. As far as they're concerned, these things are real. They exist. A shark can even come up through my floor, because my floor would turn to the ocean if the light wasn't on. That's how your mind works when you're a child. And you can imagine these stories being told to kids. It would keep them indoors, right? It would keep them from wandering off too far. It would keep them by the light, by the fire, by the hearth. Oh, why they still matter today? Why does Grendel matter today? I mean, he was one of our first villains, right? One of our first kind of epic monsters. Grendel's mother, the dragon. Again, we'll talk about the dragon next week. But I think they matter because they do tell us about ourselves. They let us know that the fears that we have now in the 21st century, we had 1,500 years ago. These are basic human emotions, basic human fears that we've always had, that fear of the dark, that fear of the unknown. And it's coming to terms with that. It's coming to understand that we have these fears that allow us to go off and wander over that hill just to see what's on the other side, or climb that mountain, or go into space, land on the fucking moon. These are the things that push us forward, I think. I'm meandering, getting way off topic. I mean, look, I'm still studying this stuff. If you guys have got any ideas or perspectives that I might have missed out about Grendel and Grendel's mother, leave them in the comments below. If your only experience with Grendel and Grendel's mother is the Robert Zemeckis animated film from 2007, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Read one of the translations. I would recommend either Seamus Heaney, or this one. I'd recommend either one of these. Right, so this one or this one. This is the hardback, and that's the back of the book, not the front of the book. Seamus Heaney and Tom Shippey, I think, have done some great translations. There's hundreds of translations. There's bound to be one in your language if your language isn't English. I highly recommend it, because I'd love to hear what you have to say about this as well. So, yeah, this has been a long video. I might not edit this down. I might just let it run, because I like meandering. Stay frosty. Happy Wednesdays. YouTube algorithm thinks you'll like whatever video is on screen right now. Yeah. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed. Like the video if you like the video. And I'll see you next week when we discuss the dragon.